I'm in a sweatshirt because Mike and I wore the same shirt today.
Twinsies, you should go to BGG-Con. And why? Because there you might be able to play some of the games that we've played the most out of all the games of all times.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murph, and that's right. Today we're going to talk about our most played games. So before you even watch it, down in the comments, let us know what is your most played game or what you think is your most played game.
Sure, yeah, if you don't track your games, which you can do right here on Board Game Geek, you should just, whatever you think back, you're like, man, I played that game a lot. Let us know in the comments below. So yeah, these are games that have obviously stood the test of time for us.
A little bit.
They're ones that are clearly infinitely replayable for us. And yeah, we've come back to them time and time again, so let's hop into it. So first up is Res Arcana. We've talked about this in other recent videos as a game that we have had quite a journey with. This is a game where you are going to get a hand of cards and you are going to be playing them out throughout the game and trying to build a little kind of engine. It's like a micro engine builder because you're not getting more and more and more cards. You have kind of this finite amount and only access to a few of them at a time. And you're trying to build an engine where you can produce resources, exchange resources into other things, and try to build these kind of places of power, these kind of big tiles that you are going to then funnel resources into to kind of increase their value in a race to 10 points. So this is a game that when we first played it way back when it first came out, we weren't the hugest fans of it. And it was partially because like people we were playing against were just way better than we were. And I was like, I don't understand how to make points. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I have these resources, but I'm not doing anything with them. And then I started playing it more often on Board Game Arena, and this is where all the plays come in. And a buddy of mine really just played it over and over and over and over again in this kind of long-standing rivalry. And through that, I was able to discover the game, ways to work everything, ways to work the cards, ways to strategically discard cards for resources and find different avenues to gain points. And it's a race game really to these 10 points. And that's something that's been really satisfying to kind of invest a lot of time into a game in that kind of pursuit of understanding, like trying to crack the code, trying to get better. And it's something that I feel like I have done. So it's been very satisfying. And in the process of that, we've accrued quite a few plays of it.
Our number 9 is going to be the Unmatched series. Now you might be thinking we're cheating a little bit because we're putting a whole series on here, but whatever, it's still the same game ultimately because you can mix and match as much as you want. But the Unmatched series we have played a ton of, and we actually haven't even started playing digitally. There is now a digital version. If we start adding in digital plays and we start playing it more, this is probably gonna go up that list. I love Unmatched. Unmatched is great. Unmatched is a game where you're gonna take two heroes from myth and legend, from real life. This one right here, Slings of Arrow, is based off of, there are 4 characters in here. There is Shakespeare, and then 4 of Shakespeare's creations are in the game. And so you can play like Shakespeare versus Titania or something like that. It's very, very cool. But there's like King Arthur, there's like Bruce Lee, there's a whole Marvel set. So you can have like Deadpool versus a T-Rex from Jurassic Park. It's bonkers. There's so many characters at this point. They're really, really cool. Some of them are IP based or like real people. A lot of them are mythology. It's just great. But nonetheless, this is a game where every single character has a unique deck of cards, and you are trying to eliminate the other person's hero on a map. So you're maneuvering around the board, trying to eliminate the other person's hero through the playing of these cards. And these cards are going to be attack cards, defend cards, and then schemes. Schemes will kind of just like, you get to move 3 and then draw 2 cards, something like that, And it's very, very simple. One thing I like about Unmatched is you can teach Unmatched in like 5 minutes. It's like, this is how attacks work, this is how defense work, this is how schemes work. This is how you move around the board. And then the rest of it is like, well, your deck is completely unique. So for me to teach you the whole thing, I'd have to teach you your entire deck. Every single card just tells you exactly what it does. Just kind of follow it. And again, you can get better and better and better at this game, of course, but it's actually really, really easy to get into. And people ask us a lot, like, what should we start? Where should we start? There's so much Unmatched. There's like 60 characters at this point. I'm like, just get a set with characters that you like. Like if you really like Marvel stuff, then get one of the Marvel sets. If you really like Shakespearean, this kind of stuff, then get, don't worry about this, don't worry about this. I didn't do that. You did that, chat. You did that, comments. Just get the Shakespearean set. If you like Jurassic Park, get the Jurassic Park set. You can do anything with this, and that's why I really, really like it. There's also a really big burgeoning like tournament scene starting, which is really, really cool. There's like an Unmatched website where people make their own like fan decks, and like Restoration Games, who makes the game, has like really supported that and hasn't like tried to shut that down, which I think is really cool. This set was made by a fan. They had essentially a contest where people could submit their own fan decks, and they made a couple of them, and this is one of them. I think it's super cool. And so yeah, Unmatched is great. We've played a ton of it. We're gonna keep playing it because it's relatively short. It's like 20, 30 minutes. It's easy to learn. There's tons of new characters. It's just great.
Next up is Space Base. This is a fantastic game, or else we wouldn't have played it as many times as we have. This is a game where you are kind of building up this fleet of ships that are going to have depots from numbers 1 through 12. And you're going to be on your turn rolling 2 dice, and you can choose to either use those dice separately. So if I have a 4 and a 2, I can activate my Sector 4 and my Sector 2, or I can combine those dice to activate Sector 6. And in general, the higher numbers, which are going to require both of your dice, are going to be more valuable, but of course they're harder to roll. What's great about this game is as you're purchasing ships, you are going to be replacing the ships that are already on those matching spaces, but they don't just go away, they actually flip upside down and tuck underneath your player board, leaving just this little red banner that is going to be something that's going to activate if it's rolled when it is any of your opponent's turns. So this is a game that you were always engaged with, because you're always saying, what'd you roll? Okay, oh, that gives me some goodies. I got some money, or I got some points out of that. That's really great. So that as it comes back around to you, you might have hit a few of your sectors a few different times, and now you have a bunch more money before you even roll your dice to activate anything on your own. So there's this wonderful kind of build as you go. As you buy better ships that are higher level, they might just produce more resources and things for you generally. Then as you continually deploy your ships, you have a greater chance of people rolling something that you've already flipped over. Or you can like really invest in one sector. You know, your 10 sector, you've bought like 4 or 5 ships for that and deployed it a bunch of times. So it's like a 10 is hard to roll. But if one of your opponents rolls it, you get everything that you have that has a red banner on it. It's not just one of them, so you can really kind of build up certain spaces or kind of spread it all out. It's up to you, and you're racing to 40 points. So this is one that it can accommodate so many players. It's a game that everyone's constantly engaged with, and as a result, we've had a lot of occasion over the years to play it. It's something that, you know, isn't too hard to explain and everything, so it's just one that we kind of have come back to time and time again, and they've added, you know, expansion materials and things to kind of keep the interest high, and has resulted in a lot of plays.
Our next most played game is going to be Turing Machine. Turing Machine, I will say, this is probably more Mike than me, though I have played a ton of Turing Machine. Turing Machine is just, it's one of those games that you can play over and over and over and over again, because this is just a logic deduction game. This is a game where you are trying to find a 3-number sequence. So it could be like 5, 2, 3. And then there's 3 colors as well, blue, yellow, and purple. So you can be like, okay, it's going to be the 5 purple, 3 blue, and then the 2 yellow or something like that, and that's the sequence. And then basically there's going to be a bunch of these verifiers out on the board, and those verifiers are going to essentially give you information about it. So you create a sequence of numbers. I'm going to, again, 5, 3, 2, purple, blue, yellow, right? You put that together, and then you basically are going to ask a verifier. So the verifier might be something like yellow is greater than purple, something like that. So then you check that verifier with the sequence of numbers you have. It's hard to explain how this works, but nonetheless, there will be like a little hole in your sequence of numbers, and then you'll put that verifier on there, and that verifier will either show in that little hole either a check mark, as in like yes, or an X, meaning no. So in this case, yellow is greater than purple. Our sequence is 5 purple, blue 3, 2 yellow. It's hard to keep this all straight. So if we ask that verifier, is yellow greater than purple, we would check that. It would say no, because in this sequence, it is not correct. And so you're like, okay, so that means this. And so you start getting these verifiers that will you're asking certain things of it, and then getting the sequence you chose to be verified. So you're like, okay, so now next time I need to choose a different sequence, and you can start deducing things down. I'm explaining this very badly because it's really weird to explain. But when you get into it, it works fine, I promise. Ignore my whole verification thing. It was very confusing. But nonetheless, the cool thing is there are a whole bunch of different verifiers. I mean, there's like tons of them. And then you can get like a whole different set of verifiers out there. And so you kind of have these new puzzles all the time. There's tons of puzzles in the book, but they also have kind of like a daily puzzle, kind of like Wordle. Mike always calls this like the Wordle of board games. Even though there is a Wordle board game, because every day there's a new puzzle, because you can just have millions of puzzles, because you can move these verifiers in all these different ways. And so this is one of those games you can play endlessly, and every single time it's just a new puzzle. And that's why deduction games are so great, and why you can kind of play them forever, is because every single time you're dealing with a new puzzle, and that's what keeps it always interesting. So Mike would just have this set up on his like table at home, and then every day he would play Turing Machine. He would call it the turtle. He would do the turtle every single day. And then on top of that, we've played it a whole bunch on our own. He's played it a ton on BGA. There is a ton of Turing Machine going on in this house. So I love Turing Machine. Ignore my bad explanation of it.
Next up is Can't Stop. This is a game that I have played so many times, mostly because my wife and I will play it on Board Game Arena over and over and over again while we're just sitting on the couch. Well, we have it physically, but was like, oh, we can play like so many games in a row. And this is a pure, simple push your luck game. This is a game where you are trying to complete 3 columns first. The columns are going to be 2 through 12, and you're going to be rolling dice and creating up to 2 sets of these 2 dice. You're going to pair them up to advance up these tracks in hopes of completing 3 tracks before your opponent does. So for example, if I roll, 2 1s, a 4, and a 5, I can combine those in different ways to make a 2 and a 9, or a 5 and a 6, and work your way up these tracks. Now 7 in general is easier to roll than 12, because that would require 2 6s, and with 7 there's multiple ways to make that happen. So the 7 track is a lot longer than the 12 track. You only need 3 spaces to get to the top of the 12 track, but it's harder to roll. So there's that kind of like wondering about like which things you should invest in. Do I go for the hard to roll stuff, but the things that are shorter, or do I go for something like a 7, but it's gonna be a long way, but they're easier to roll? And this is important because on a turn, you can only work on 3 tracks. If I've already committed to my 4, my 6, and my 9, those are the 3 tracks I can work on. And as I continue to roll the dice, if I choose to keep rolling, if I ever roll a situation where I can't progress on at least 1 track, you bust and you lose all progress from that current turn. Now, alternatively, you can choose to stop and you kind of save your progress, you make a little marker, and then in the future turns, if you keep working on that, you'll go from where you last left off. So there's that kind of push and pull of like, if I get 1 more 6, I can get to the top of this track now, which blocks it off for other people, gets me closer to my victory. But if I bust right now, I lose a ton of progress, and that's always super duper fun to play. And my wife and I will play it over and over and over again in this kind of like rivalry that we have at this point. It's great.
Our number 5 is going to be Scout. Scout is one of those games. This is a small box card game by Oink, and this is one of those games that is just so darn easy to get to the table that when we first got Scout, and for the first like year and a half, 2 years or so, it was our small box card game that we brought everywhere. If we were going anywhere, even if we're going to Lowe's, there's no chance we're playing a game at Lowe's. I'll bring Scout just in case. It's one of those games. And this is a game we taught over and over and over and over again and played over and over and over and over again because it's just so darn good. Scout is a game, a card shedding game where you're trying to get rid of your cards. And it's a really interesting game where you're going to get this hand of cards. It's going to have numbers 1 through 10 on them. Well, you don't always get 1 through 10, but they can have 1 through 10 on them. And then you're going to get them shuffled up, and then you bring your hand up. The whole point of the game is that you can't shuffle your hand. So it might be like 2, 4, 8, 2, 2, 7, 8, 10, something like that. And there's a different number on either side of the card. And so when you get your hand, you can either keep your hand like this without shuffling it, or you can flip the hand over and take the other side. But again, you can't shuffle them. So this game is all about trying to essentially make your hand work, because it's a card shedding game, but it's also a ladder climbing game. So the first person, whoever's going first, is going to put out a number. Let's say put out a card or cards. Say they put out a 4. The next person then has to beat that card or do what's called scouting. And so they could put out a 5. And if they put out a 5, they take the card that they just beat and they keep it. That's going to be a point. So you're basically trying to climb this ladder. So what's better than a single card? 2 cards. So you could put out like a run, like a 3-4, or a pair like 3-3. And pairs beat runs. So someone has like 9-10 as a run, but someone could put out 1-1, and that would be that 9-10. Or again, you could pay like 3 cards. More cards are always better. So you're kind of trying to climb this ladder, and then if you can't beat it or you don't want to, you can choose not to, you can do what's called scouting, which means you're going to give the person who you couldn't beat a point, you're going to give them a little token, and then you can take one of the cards from their cards they put on the table, and then you can put it anywhere you want in your hand in either way. And so it's a way to kind of get stuff together, because you might have, let's say we have 8, 3, 8, 8, 8. You're like, okay, 8, 8, 8 is great, but if I can get rid of that 3, then all my 8s are together, and I have 4 8s, which is really, really strong. So this game is all about trying to work your hand to try and make it into a good hand by playing certain cards, getting certain things together. It's really, really great. I love Scout so much. It's super easy to teach. It seems to go over well with everyone. You can just play it over and over and over again, because every hand you get is a new puzzle. Mike's not in a different shirt.
I'm in the same
You're
shirt.
in a different shirt.
I didn't forget anything. You forgot something. What I did forget to talk about was, of course, So Clover. This is a game that we play over and over and over again. It's like our go-to default most favorite party game at this point. Our friends and I are constantly in search of like the perfect score. So in this game, you are assembling a clover with these random disparate words. They're going to make random strange pairs along the 4 sides of a 4-leaf clover. And you're going to have to make clues that you hope point to the 2 words that match. Now, each of these cards have 4 words on them, and once you assemble your clover and make your clues, you take all those cards off, shuffle in a 5th one, randomize it all, and then people have to try to reassemble your clover. This is something that I first played at BGG Con, and when it was being explained to me, I was absolutely hopeless. I was like, there is no possible way you could do this. There's no possible way you could reconstruct this clover. But then you actually can. If the clues are good and stuff, you can start to say, you know, garlic, and you have vampire, you're like, well, that is a weakness. And then if I put that in, does that now create maybe something else that makes sense for another one of my clues? And you can actually start to reassemble this clover. So it's one that our friends and I, that we just play over and over. If you're ever kind of near the end of a night, not even a night at gaming, we're just hanging out, and it's almost inevitable that like someone busts out So Clover, we play a couple rounds, see if we can go for the perfect score, and it just never gets old.
Our number 3 is going to be The Crew. The Crew, Mission Deep Sea, The Search for Planet 9. We're going to kind of go with The Search for Planet 9 we've probably played more of, but really we're going to kind of count both Crews in one, even though they're technically different games, but they're kind of not. Nonetheless, The Crew is a cooperative trick-taking game where you're going to have some kind of mission. So the mission will get kind of doled out to people where it's like, I need to end the game with the pink 7. Mike needs to win the last trick. Mary needs to win the first trick. Certain different kinds of like, essentially challenges that each person is going to have. And then you're working together, trick-taking, trying to make sure that everyone gets their objective fulfilled. And that's pretty much it. It's so much fun. It's super interesting. Again, kind of like we talked about each time, with a lot of these games, it's like the reason why we keep playing them is because every game there's a new puzzle. Because with trick-taking in general, there's always a new puzzle, because whatever the hand you get, you have to figure out, how am I going to make this hand work? How am I going to win with this hand? But in this case, because it's cooperative, then you also have the kind of missions on top of it and the objectives on top of it. It makes it even more interesting, where you're like, okay, I have to win the pink 7. And everyone else knows you have to win the pink 7. So Mike's over there going like, okay, I have the pink 7. I need to make sure that I'm putting this in a hand that Nick is going to win. And it just makes it so, so interesting. The Crew, so we played a lot of The Crew when it first came out. You have this weird story with The Crew where we were in England for a convention right when COVID hit. And it was wild. We were like, when we first got to London, it was before COVID had hit. And then we had spent like a week up in Northern England, and then we came back down to London for a few days, and then we left. And then the difference between that like week that we were gone was wild, because that's like when everything started shutting down. And so when we went back to London, we were kind of just like in our hotel, and like in our hotel lobby, because we kind of couldn't really go anywhere, kind of couldn't really do anything. And so we had The Crew, and there was 5 of us, and we just played The Crew over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because we kind of couldn't do anything else. Every once in a while we'd go for like a walk around a park, and then we'd be like, all right, I guess we'll go back to the hotel, play some more Crew. So because of that alone, we played it a ton. We've played it a bunch on BGA. We've just shown it to a whole bunch of different people. With Crew, it's just one of the games you play it, boom, play it, boom, play it, and you just play it over and over and over and over again, because it's just really, really fun.
Our next up is Pandemic. Now, this is the game, the granddaddy of them all for us. This is what we played way before we knew about the larger world of board games at all. We just had been exposed to this game by friends. We found it and bought it, in some store. And for a long time, this was the game we had. We had this and like Catan and Bang, a couple things like college games and stuff. And Pandemic was one that we would just play over and over and over again. We'd bring it with us to like Denny's, when we were young and didn't have money and stuff. We'd go to Denny's and get a cheap dinner and play Pandemic and spend all this time there and probably annoy the staff, which we appreciate your patience on that. This is a game so much that we have worn out a copy, lost a copy, got a new copy, wore that copy out, and on and on and on. And when we say Pandemic, we're also talking about there's a larger series of games that are all under the Pandemic line. So if you include all the versions of Pandemic, the Pandemic Legacies and stuff, then the number really gets up there. But even just base Pandemic with the first expansion, it's for a long time, several years, that was our collection. That was our exposure to board games. And we played over and over and over again without any knowledge that this whole other giant world of games, thousands and thousands of games to play, even existed. This was enough to just make us very happy and play. And it's one that even now still plays so well and just still it brings people into the hobby, which is great. And it absolutely deserves its place in the kind of pantheon of great games that helps create all of us wonderful board gamers.
Our number one is going to be Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. Marvel Legendary is still our most played game, and I will say that it's kind of wild that like this is still our most played game, probably by a pretty wide margin. When we used to play it, that was before we kind of started tracking our plays. So, but we know that it's still our most played games because we played it so much. But it's kind of wild because we play Marvel Legendary like maybe once a year at this point, but it's still our most played game. So when we got Marvel Legendary, it was kind of when we first started getting into board games, and me, Mike, and his partner at the time, Casey, would play Legendary so much. We loved this game, still love the game, we just don't play it nearly as much as we used to. But we would seriously play Legendary probably at least three nights a week, probably 2 or 3 nights a week. And when we played Legendary on those nights, we would play it like 3 to 5 times in a row. We would just play it and then get new heroes, get new masterminds, all that kind of stuff, play it, get new heroes, we would just go boom, boom, over and over and over again. And we did that for like a year and a half. Real talk. We played it that much. We played it over and over and over again. Every single week, every single time we played it multiple times because we just couldn't get enough of it. This is a game where you are going to get a group of 5 heroes, and they're like Marvel heroes. So it'd be like Wolverine and Captain America and Black Widow and a whole bunch of them. There is an ungodly amount of Legendary out there, so every character you can think of is probably in Legendary somewhere at this point. There's so much, it's insane. And you have that, and you're going against some kind of big bad, some kind of mastermind, Kingpin or Magneto or whatever. And they're going to have some kind of scheme, which is one of the ways you can lose is by not fulfilling the scheme or the scheme kind of hurting you. And then there's going to be villains in the game, and the villains will be coming into the city. You're trying to attack the villains. One of the cool things is it's not like I'm Wolverine and Mike is like Jean Grey or anything like that. These cards, you can get any mix of them. So I can have some Wolverine cards, I can have some Jean Grey cards, I can have some Black Widow cards, you can have a whole bunch of different stuff. And they all work off each other. When you play this card, it's like a green card, which is strength, and you have the other card that you play, and it does this thing, but if you played a green card before it, you then get this extra thing. It's a lot of that kind of stuff where the order that you play stuff really matters. And it's just super interesting because, again, like I said, there's a lot of Legendary. So at this point, we stopped collecting Legendary years ago. And we have, at one point, we had to build a special box to house a legendary, which is why I don't have the box cover here, is because we don't have the original game anymore. But we had, I think, I went and counted at one point, we had like over 100 different heroes. I think we have like 60 or 70 different masterminds. There are like 40 or 50 different villain groups. Keep in mind, you play one mastermind in a game. There are like 2 or 3 villain groups, depending on the game, and there are 5 heroes. So the way you can mix, and then there's like 100 different schemes, which again, change up the game a lot. And so the way you can mix all that together is literally, it's basically infinite. It's insane. And again, we only have like maybe half of it at this point because they kept coming out with it after we stopped collecting it. So it was just one of those games where we would just play it over and over and over again because every single time it was interesting because we would just change up the mastermind, change up the villain groups, change up the scheme, change up the heroes, and you had a whole new game. And like I said, we just played it again and again and again, and we just never stopped. It's so much fun. I still love it. It's got a huge, huge place in my heart, even though we don't really play it that much anymore. But every once in a while I get this hanker, I'm like, man, I want to play some Legendary. And we'll break it out, and it's still so much fun. It's pretty wild that like Legendary is still our #1. I talked about it during I was talking about, it's like, man, it's like, because we play it like once a year now, but it goes to show that like when you're really into a game,
yeah,
you can just play it over and over and over again, and it's still just got that top spot.
Yeah, and I feel like people all have that, where like, this is the game that we play 3 times a week for a period of time, an extended period of time, and that's again why we want to hear in the comments, what are those games for you? Which are the ones that just you just hit it again and again and again, because Legendary and all these other ones were ones that have you just set it right back up and start again.
All right, and that's going to be it for us. We'll see y'all later.
Bye.